Hello, this is Julia from Just One More Card, and I have a new project today for the Make the Day Special Stamp Store blog. And we're going to create a stunning one-layer card with some Copic coloring and using dies for embossing. I always wanted to try this technique and I'm really excited to show it to you today. I'm starting out by using the basic creative cuts by Mama Elephant. Some of you might know them as the Femme frames, but there's actually more to the set than just this. And I'm using the smaller of the frames, which has the stitching on the inside. And since this is a one-layer card, you really want to make sure that you line everything up correctly, because one-layer cards are pretty unforgiving when it comes to oopsies, you know. What I did is I didn't mask it. I taped down the frame to my card base. And what am I doing now? I'm actually going for my crease mat. So this is from Sizzix, and I'm using it with my Big Shot. So to show you the sandwich, this is my plate open on tab 2. I'm putting down the crease mat instead of the first plate. Then I'm putting my card base down and the die faces into the crease mat. So basically the sharp edges of the die go into the mat, and then I place my cutting plate on top of it. And I hope you can see this here. I get this beautiful indentation of the die into the card base. I'm using Simon Says Stamp Ultra Heavy Cardstock here. And it's not cutting through, it's just indenting because I used this crease mat instead of a cutting plate on the bottom. Next up, I'm using stamping masking paper by Inky. You can use anything to mask off the area. It's basically the area inside of the die or inside of the embossing that I just created. And I'm using this Denami design starry background stamp, but there are other products in the Make the Day Special Stamp Store which I've listed here that you can use alternatively. And I'm using a very light ink because I want to create kind of a frame around the area I just embossed, but I want to have it one layer, so that's why I'm masking off the inside area of the front panel so it will remain white. You will see this in a moment when I peel this off. So here you can see I have the stars on the outside, basically on the outside of the embossing, and the inside of the front panel is completely white. Next up is the Label Layers die by W+9, and again, I'm not going to die cut it, I'm going to emboss it onto the card. We want to keep this one layer, but I still want to add dimension to the card, and this technique is just absolutely awesome. I'm so happy I can finally do this. It took me forever to figure this out. Again, I'm holding this down with some masking tape, taking the platform from my Sizzix Big Shot on tab 2, putting down the crease mat instead of a cutting plate, putting down the card base with the die facing towards the crease mat, and then putting my cutting plate on top. And here you can see I get another beautiful embossed frame on this card. I think this looks gorgeous. So next up is my C1 Copic marker, and I'm also taking the colorless blender. And what I want to do is I want to create the illusion of a shadow. This embossing is so subtle you will not really get a shadow from it, but I want this this label to stand out more. So what I'm going to do is I'm super carefully flicking out from the embossed line, like flicking out from it. And then I'm going to use my colorless blender to soften the edge of this flicking, because I don't have that much space that I can do like a long flick and have it feather out really smoothly. So I'm basically cheating by taking the colorless blender and just going over this. The colorless blender will not take away the color, and sometimes it takes a few minutes to actually have its full effect. So I need to be a little bit patient when using this, and I'm being super careful not to color into the embossed line, but away from the embossed line with very soft flicking. I went around the entire embossed area doing this, and now I'm just applying another coat of the colorless blender to smooth this out. And you can see I have a very subtle shadow. It actually doesn't really translate well on camera, but I have a very subtle shadow which makes this label area just pop a bit more and gives the card more dimension. So I've prepared another mask. It will leave the inside area of this label empty, but it will protect the outside area. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to stamp inside the label area, but I want to make sure that my stamping does not extend outwards, basically across the embossed lines. And since I don't trust myself to get it right, that's why I'm doing it this way. So I'm using the Hero Arts soft purple shadow ink, and you can see how I stamp it here. I basically put down one edge and then roll the stamp onto my paper. I find that I get better impressions this way when I do it like that. And I also always wait like for a second or two after I put down my stamp to make sure it's, I get a good impression. Then I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and these stamps are from the Carnival Cupcakes stamp set by Mama Elephant. It's back in stock, get it? And I'm using the Tuxedo Black ink by Memento because this is an ink, it's a dye ink that works well with Copic markers or other alcohol-based markers. Because if you use other inks, there are a few others that work, but this works best because it doesn't bleed when you use alcohol markers with it, and that's very important. I fuzzy cut two stamped images, one for the cupcake bottom and one for the top of the cupcake, and I'm masking off this area. The reason for this is I want to create dimension by having some critters behind the cupcake. So in order to stamp them behind the cupcake, I'm masking off the cupcake itself. Then I'm stamping this cute little lion, and you can see it looks like it's on top of the cupcake, but it isn't. And I'm repeating the same thing with this little cute bear, teddy bear. And again, it looks like it's on top of the cupcake, but it's not, because I masked the area. And now when I peel off the masking, you will see that we've created the illusion of the critters being behind the cupcake. That's what you can achieve with masking. So there's a ton of stuff in this video. We've got embossing with dyes, we've got masking galore actually, and now we're actually gonna start coloring. Enjoy! Now that I've colored my critters, let's do something exciting. Let's mix RV02 and BG11. You would never think of actually mixing these two, but I was like, you sometimes have really crazy colors for cupcake toppings, and why not do this with Copics? And usually you would only blend Copics that are from the same color family, or at least adjacent color families, like oranges and browns or oranges and yellows. But you wouldn't usually blend pinks and like aqua colors. But it's possible. You have to, you have to experiment a bit with the markers you have. But what I'm doing here basically is I carefully flicked in some of the pink from one side, and then I'm flicking in the BG11 from the other side, and you can see that I'm leaving a little bit of white space between the colors for this first coat of color. And I also always have to turn my project, because I can only really well flick like away from me. If I have to flick towards me, it usually doesn't work out that well. So I've applied another coat of the BG11, turning my project as I said, and now I'm flicking out the pink color again, and I'm flicking it more into the BG11 color. I want these colors to overlap a bit, not completely, but I need them to overlap a bit so I can create a blended area. And even though you can't see it completely here, I'm on this, was it the fourth? On the first layer of color, I'm not actually flicking from the very top down, but more just in the area where these colors overlap. And now I'm flicking the BG11 up into the pink area just a little bit so these colors overlap, and I can create a blended area. You will have to experiment how often you have to do this with your markers. And now I'm applying like a heavier coat, like I'm applying more pressure to my pencil and flicking more into the area. And now I'm only applying some color to the very bottom part. I'm not going into the area where these colors overlap, so I have a very smooth blended effect with two colors that you usually wouldn't blend. Here you go, you can see it quite well. So now you've seen me create the shadows so our critters don't just, hang in midair. And then I'm using the Make-A-Wish stamp with my favorite ink, VersaFine Onyx Black, to stamp the sentiment. And what you didn't see me do on camera, I mean, here you see again the beautiful embossing that we did. I added some sequins just, to add some sparkle to the card. I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you did, come check us out at Make the Day Special or on my blog, and thanks for watching.